So I fell in this trap saying, oh, just pump and dump these businesses. So I started 10 companies simultaneously as an angel investor. No clue what I was doing. They collapse. I'm collapsing. I eradicate all the cash I'd saved. I wipe it out. And I remember there was a commercial on the radio, and they said the average American has $5,000 of credit card debt. At that point, I had almost 100,000. And I was just sitting there saying, I wish I was average. I wish I was average.
James Schramko here. Welcome back to my podcast. This is episode 946. Today we're chatting with Mike Michalowicz, and we're talking about Clockwork, the revised edition. Welcome, Mike.
James, thanks for having me.
You're a hilarious guy. I've been really enjoying your video content, also your website, especially all the famous people you've been able to hang around with, from Tony Robbins to Oprah and Bill Gates. You know, not everyone has such a deep connection as you.
My neighbor, yeah.
I love, obviously, you bring a lot of authenticity to what you do, especially your bio. Was refreshing to hear you talk about some of the things that didn't go so well for you in your past. You've had a lot of things go well, but you also open up about things that didn't. And I think they were obviously formative into how you ended up creating the flotilla of books that you've mastered.
Thank you. I first want to share that while Bill Gates was my neighbor, it's not the Bill Gates people are likely thinking of. His name happened to be Bill Gates, William Gates, but he's not the founder of Microsoft. And the celebrity pictures, I like to poke fun at what I see other authors or influencers do, and they say, look at me, clearly I'm significant and important because I'm with Oprah in this picture, or I'm with Anthony Robbins. So the picture of me and Anthony Robbins is a picture of Anthony Robbins, and it's in an event, and there's people in the crowd going back for miles. And I'm the very last person in that row is me. So it's a little dot, and I circle and say, that's me.
I like what you said there, that I yelled out, Anthony, I love you. And he probably heard me.
He probably heard me, right? That's why I put, yeah.
I love this the most because I've actually heard of some of those people who go to Richard Branson's island and take a picture with Richard Branson. And they're like, here's my friend, Richard Branson. And the first thing is like, no, you're not. You're not friends. Richard Branson wouldn't remember your name 5 minutes after you left the island. But I've actually heard someone say that they got sent a cease and desist letter to take down the picture of them and their good friend, Richard Branson, which I thought was hilarious. So
that's funny.
When I read your page, I'm like, this is so refreshing. This is
thank
incredible.
You. Yeah, I think, and listen, there's an intention behind that too. I'm not discounting that other people haven't met those individuals, and I know what they're looking to do. It's authority by association. But for me, I believe, and I wrote a whole book on this subject, that when you do something that's polar opposite the common approach, it's distinguishable, it gets noticed. I do like to joke around. I like to have some fun. I like to goof on myself and be self-deprecating. And I saw all these other authors putting themselves with the famous people. So I'm like, what's the opposite? Well, it's the disassociation. So that's why I gave a little jab at that kind of genre or approach.
My audience are going to love this because they are super authentic. You mentioned something also that really resonated with me, and we will get to Clockwork, trust me, is you said that during the time of building out your business, you've had 4 multi-million-dollar businesses, you've sold 2 of them, you've one to private equity, another to Fortune 500, so incredibly successful. But you said during that time, I repeatedly fell victim to my own arrogance and ignorance. This is what my mentor drummed into me. He said that's what brought down the Titanic. He said Captain Smith was arrogant and ignorant. And he actually warned me against that through my formative years in growing a business. At the time, we were running a $100 million per year business. And he warded me against those 2 things. And that you actually mentioned those 2 words. It was fascinating. Again, super honest for you to say that. Especially lost your house, launched 10 failed businesses, suffered depression. It's a miracle that you're still walking the planet. But
well, it actually is. I mean, I don't want to go too far into that story and be draconian, but there was a time I remember, just to give some context, I built these 2 companies. I sold them. I thought I was a genius. I was in the right place at the right time, and I put effort into it, but it wasn't genius. And they were never sustainable when I was running them. I was in constant cash crisis. I made money on the exits, So I fell in this trap saying, oh, just pump and dump these businesses. So I started 10 companies simultaneously as an angel investor. No clue what I was doing. They collapse. I'm collapsing. I eradicate all the cash I'd saved. I wipe it out. And I remember there was a commercial on the radio, and they said the average American has $5,000 of credit card debt. At that point, I had almost 100,000, and I was just sitting there saying, "I wish I was average. I wish I was average." And the thought crossed my mind, and I ran the numbers. I said, "Gosh, if I wasn't on this planet, I may be worth more." It was a really dark period for me, and I share that not because I'm proud of it, but I think it's the journey for most entrepreneurs. This is a roller coaster ride, and the most afflicted community with depression is the entrepreneurial community. So first of all, the first step is to acknowledge I was depressed, and then seek out help. I found some tools and resources that serve me. Now I have a therapist just to stay on top of my game and not slide back into that.
Well, they say that sometimes we create the solutions, that we need the most. So I think you've produced all these fantastic resources and tools. I know you're on a mission to help entrepreneurs. I coach people like that. They're single mums who are feeling the weight of the world on top of them. But I've had one of your friends, clearly Gino Wickman, he's been a guest on the show too. And he said that, not everyone should be an entrepreneur to start with. And a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with, they tend to be high visionaries, or you'd hear them talk about, self-diagnosing with ADHD and stuff. They do have more of a mental roller coaster perhaps than an average person. So thank you for creating these amazing tools. I remember reading Profit First in the sauna at an old place that I used to live before someone left it on.
That was a very intimate time between me and you. I didn't realize.
And melted down. I know you well. I've had you in my mind. Again, you were talking about something my grandfather taught me, like pay yourself first. And I'm like, it's incredible that so many people weren't looking after their finances, but you created a fantastic guide. Now, which of your books would you say has been the most commercially successful?
Oh, Profit First has by a long shot. It's sold now about 1 million copies in the 2 versions and the multiple languages. So it's in, I think, 27 or 28 different languages besides English. And it's hard to track all the numbers, but it's solidly over 1 million books. And then, the other books have done well. If I had to rank them, Profit First is number 1, Clockwork is number 2, and that's why I'm doing a revised and expanded edition. And then the Pumpkin Plan is probably number 3 in its overall performance.
Yeah, nice. And you've got the toilet paper.
That was the first book I ever wrote. That's sold 100,000 plus copies. And other ones I've written have done well. But Profit First is the bell cow. And it's funny, in reflection, I asked myself why, because I feel, it's funny, you just alluded to it a minute ago, every book I write is actually intentionally trying to solve an issue I have with entrepreneurship. What we teach is actually what we need to learn. And I get that. So all these subjects are things I need to learn. And I'm getting better, I feel, not perfect, but I'm getting better at learning, better at codifying knowledge and documenting it. So basically every book I write, I'm like, oh, this is a better version of me. This is a better book. But it doesn't mean they sell or perform better. So then I'm like, well, why does one book sell better or not? And it's pretty obvious. The bigger the need, the broader the need, the more people that need to be served by that, the simpler the solution and the more impactful the solution. So if I can see immediate impact, significant impact with little effort, and it's the biggest problem I have, well, that's the solution. And in retrospect, it's pretty clear that most businesses, almost all small businesses struggle with profitability to some degree, but the majority, I would say it's over 80%. Actually, I know it's over 80%, it's about 83%, are in check-to-check survival. And the solution that I teach in Profit First is not something that I created out of thin air. It's established concepts that have existed since BC. Pay yourself first, the envelope system. And modern authors and influencers have created phenomenal systems around this for personal finance. I just hadn't seen an application applied to business finance. So I was like, oh, that's the solution for me. That's the solution hopefully for others. And I've learned now this is a solution that a lot of business owners need.
They definitely need it. But I also think Clockwork has an amazing place in the scheme of things. I've heard you talk about that we need sales like oxygen, that we need to be profitable like nutrition, that this one's about recapturing time. And again, you resonate with me talking about anti-grind, anti-hustle. My book's actually called Work Less, Make More. So I'm on the same.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
I'm in the same category as you in that regard. I'm all about freeing people up. I've partnered with a friend of mine, Lloyd. He's got a whole business around this called Virtual Do. And I send him in to fix up my visionaries who are just out of control. So I keep supporting this kind of material on this podcast. We've had systemology, we've had traction. I love this topic. I want to dive into a couple of your key topics because obviously I'm going to recommend anyone who's listening to this should absolutely go and buy Clockwork. I was kindly sent the revised edition. I do want to ask you, what were the significant changes for the revision?
Yeah, great question. It is 60% brand new content. And the impetus behind this was once I introduced the book, we also started a service entity behind it. We surpassed our 1,000th client going through it. And from this, thank you, we learned what was right and what was wrong. And that's probably not even the right choice of words. We learned what was efficient in teaching it and what wasn't. There were stumbling blocks. There was points of confusion. So what I did was take the original framework. I still believe it is the right framework, but repackage it where it's more consumable. We can get through it faster. And that required a full rework. My publisher, and then they're a mainstream publisher, when I told them I want to do Revised and Expanded, they said, okay, it's authorized. Let's do this. Please get us the manuscript in 2 months. I said, 2 months? It's going to take me a full year to write this. And they're like, what, are you writing a brand new book? I said, yeah. Most Revised and Expanded editions are a new first chapter, new closing chapter, new bread, same meat. I decided to do everything new. So 60% new content, 40% restructured content. So some of the stuff is, there's a concept called the QBR. This is the heartbeat of a business. By definition, there can only be one most important activity in any business. The question is, what is it? And if you don't know what it is, your business will constantly be floundering because you're not taking care of the heart. So how do you identify it? So I teach a system to find it faster. I found in the original book, this was absurd. There was owners of businesses reading this and saying, I need to do this, but I can't tell my team. I'm like, but you need your team engaged. They said, no, because this is written for owners. They'll think I'm going down to the beach to go surfing and drink Mai Tais, and I'm not thinking about the business.
My team know I do that. The QBR, by the way, it's Queen Bee Roll. I just want to point that out.
And I would argue, not knowing your business, I think your employees don't feel you're slacking off. I bet you there's two things that are happening. I bet you they feel empowered, that you trust them, that you can be away from the business, that they can have it. But additionally, I bet you come back with ideas. I bet you find the perfect pocket on the perfect wave. It's something that hits you in your mind. You're like, I got it.
Yeah, well, we know what our roles are within the business. So I think we'll get to your 4D model because that explains what my team's doing. It was very clear to me the difference between deciding and delegation. I'm extremely good at asking for people to own their outcomes and do it however you want. Use whatever software you want. Do it whenever you want. Collaborate with whoever you want. I don't mind about any of that stuff. What I'm looking for is a consistent outcome. Like I want 7-day-a-week support for someone who asks us a question. I want our podcast to go out regularly on a consistent schedule. I want a minimum level of quality for our blog posts and emails. And my role in the business is I have to be a great coach and I have to get incredible guests onto our podcast. That's the bit I do. And I have to own that responsibility. So we have a symbiotic relationship. But I do say to them in our team meeting, I want you to have a great life. I want you to take your kids to school. I want you to go to the cafe with your partner. I want you to go and watch a movie during the week or take a week off or 2 weeks off, whatever you want, whenever you want. So we don't have vacation days, sick days or overtime or whatever. I don't know what their hourly rate is. We just have a consistent payment schedule and then an agreed output of what we want done, and they have maximum independence. But here's the crazy thing. The average tenure of my team now is over 10 years. There's 6 of us. The newest person in my team has been with me for over 10 years. So we've got a good, solid little team.
I love that. I'll give you a perspective. 2 things I want to share. One is a statistic that may kind of blow your mind, and another one is maybe why you may want to consider instituting vacations to take it a little bit further. So the first thing is statistic. Research identifies that about 14% of the population will ever start a business or build a business. 14%. And only 20% are successful, meaning it's a financially viable business after 5 years of initiating that business, which means only 3% of the population builds successful, good companies that are sustainable. And you shared it. Employees want to live a good life. They too want to work for a good company. Our job as entrepreneurs is not to do the job. It's to be the creator of job for people who want to work for a good company. That's our job. So if we're doing the work, we're stealing the job from people who actually want to work for a good company. That's lesson one. The second thing is vacation. I instituted it with Clockwork, take a 4-week vacation. I still do every year. It's an intentional disruption for my business. I'm not taking a vacation from my business as much as my business is taking a vacation from me. So it breaks that dependency. But here's the thing. The president of our company, she came to me, this is now 2 years ago, and said, Mike, now that you leave the business every year, we don't need you here. We're not dependent on you. You can reinsert yourself. I like to be the spokesperson doing what we're doing now. I like to write books. But she goes, now there's dependency on other people that's disproportionate. If other people leave, we're in trouble. So she goes, I want everyone taking a 4-week vacation. Now we have a small company. I have actually 2 locations. We have 22, 23 employees collectively. So we're tiny, but every single person takes a 4-week consecutive vacation. It's an intentional disruption to that job responsibility they have. So we have one person that is our primary social media guy, Jeremy. He's leaving next week to go on this amazing trip with his friends, hiking and so forth. As a result, he's had to train our 2 backups. Jake is one and Izzy is another. They are trained and they're doing the work that he does. He's created the system so they can do it. But what's beautiful now is when Jeremy leaves, we keep on running unabated. But the reality is Jeremy one day may leave because he has another job opportunity. Or maybe he gets sick, or maybe he decides to retire. It's going to happen that he's going to depart at some point. Now we have the redundancy in place for him, and we have it in place for everybody. Everyone's backing up everybody. That's why we institutionalize vacation. By the way, when we told people, just take unlimited vacation wherever you want to take it, people didn't take it.
I do have to align them with that. I tell them when I'm going to be away, and I suggest strongly that that's a good time for them to have time. But we definitely have policies in place. We have a knower principle. 2 people know everything. As it turns out of 6 people in my business, I'd say 4 to 6 people can do every single role in our business except for my podcast and my coaching. Like we have so much redundancy built in that they can take. I had a lady take 3 months off with a difficult pregnancy, and it was the team just cover it. It's like taking your hand out of a bucket of water. It just reforms, and they're incredible. And that's how we support them. They support the business. But I love what you're talking about here. The holiday. I just made a video yesterday before I reread your revision, and I was saying that you learn the most about your business when you come back from it. You've got that unique perspective of being an outsider. I've heard you talk about that the trouble you might have to deal with is the ego, that they may not actually need you, which is a wonderful concept, that you can then get in there and make decisions that are not revealing themselves to you when you're in the business. When you come back, pay attention to what you love about it, what you dislike about it, what broke, who stepped up, what innovations were there. So I'm totally on board that. You've talked about the QBR, the queen bee role. The other thing I think would be an essential discussion is your 4 Ds, because that really speaks to a lot of my audience who might be listening to this podcast. They're still feeling like they're doing far too much in their business, but they're saying to me things like, my team just can't think for themselves, or they just, I ask them to do something, but they keep coming back and pestering me about it. I think your 4 Ds perfectly explains what's happening there.
So the 4 Ds are the 4 elements that a business must always be navigating. But we, as the leaders or entrepreneurs of a business, we need to navigate to the highest level. So the foundational level, the first D is doing. These are the activities that the business must do to sustain itself, delivering the services or products, the administrative work behind it. It's the majority of work that's done is doing activity. It allows us to bring our services and products to market. But there's a couple other elements. The next level up from doing is deciding. Deciding is where there's an individual making decisions for other people so we can move things along. Typically, the business owner gets trapped in this. So when I first started my business, I'm doing work. I'm doing the billable work. I'm doing the administration. I hire my first admin maybe to do invoices, and I tell her, here's our best practice, go do it. And she comes back with questions like, how should we sort these invoices? And I say, well, I think we should do it by last name. That's how you've always done it. I start making decisions. The best way to visualize this is there's a Hindu goddess named Kali who's a single female head with 8 arms. That's what our business becomes. One mind, the owner's mind, controlling everyone else. We're task rabbiting. Now, the danger here is we say, oh, I'm delegating work. You're not delegating work. You're assigning tasks, because the next level is delegation. And delegation, James, you explained it perfectly. It's the assignment of mutually agreed outcomes. Here's my intention for the company. Here's the role you're serving. Do you agree that this is what we want to achieve? Tell me why. And when the employee participates in, we want to bill on time quickly, and they say, because this is fair to our clients, they have an accurate record of what we've done timely, and we get paid on time. This is a good outcome. Once we agree to that, then my job is to assign them that outcome, get us there. There's a best practice that historically has gotten us there. But when you run into road bumps, navigate us through it. And they will come back with questions. That's the default protocol for them. We have to reject answering questions. We say, I hired you for that thing on your shoulders, that brain of yours. Find the solution to that outcome. They will make mistakes. And this is the danger for many entrepreneurs. We see mistakes happen and we want to go in and fix it, which actually degrades their ability to have control over outcomes. And they go back to being a task rabbit, and you go back to deciding. Don't decide for them. Bite your tongue. Let them make mistakes.
And even if they do it wrong, that's like something you
particularly
said,
they do it wrong.
I say to them, look, if you make a decision out of the best interests of the company and looking after the client and with no malicious intent, then you can never be sacked for that. So the big thing I found, especially the culture of my team who are based in the Philippines, generally they're safety focused out of the box. When you get them, they're safety focused, and they need that income, and they don't want to make mistakes. So they'll err on the side of not doing something instead of doing something. So when I took the restrictor off and said, you know what, you can break things, you can blow stuff up, you can tell a customer they can have this, but as long as you're doing it because you think it's the best thing to do, I'll never be upset with you about it. We can certainly talk about what you might have done instead after the fact, and we'll do it in a really nice way. We're not going to lose our and just go crazy. And once you do that, they take on a whole new world of responsibility. That's when I think you really move from one D to the next D.
Agree. If you undermine their confidence in themselves by trying to correct mistakes, you destroy your company's growth. Yeah. So we have to give them enough rope. The last level is designing, and designing is where we are doing strategic thinking. Our job as entrepreneurs is to have a vision and then choreograph resources to make that vision a reality. It is the hardest work, and that's why we avoid it. It's easier just to dig a ditch than sit and solve that puzzle. And there's no question. I like to sauna too. I have a sauna, and I do a lot of work in there. I sit there and just ponder, and it takes a lot of energy. There's a lot of what ifs that go on, and sometimes it's hours of work. But the best CEOs in the world are paid for making 2, maybe 3 strategic decisions per year. Those key decisions, putting the ship in the right direction, is the game changer. And so we need to start behaving that way. The last thing I want to share is, in the new book, I revealed a 5th D, and it's intentional downtime. We already referred to it. The intentional disruption of having that 4-week vacation. There's also a study that came out of Europe, out of the UK specifically, that identified the average knowledge worker is productive 3.2 hours per day, regardless of the hours worked. So you can work 8 hours, or 5, or 4, and the output is 3.2 hours a day. The reason is we have this emotional battery. That's why there's things like decision fatigue. Mm-hmm. We can only sustain at a heightened level so much. So we should be intentionally allowing our teammates to recover so they can be optimized.
Isn't that crazy? But I just worked out my average work week is 15 hours. I'm working 708.
You're nailing it then, right? There you go.
I do it in 3 days a week, and I have 4 days off. So it's Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. This is my last call for the week. I have nothing until next Monday, right?
I love it.
Final question, and then we'll let you, I'll find out what web resource you'd like us to have a look at as well. Tell me, what do you feel about the difference between hierarchical structure and more of a flat structure when it comes to, you talk about empowering people to match their strengths and whatever. So I'm wondering how you feel about that.
I consider it like a web-like structure. I was reading a magazine called Popular Mechanics, and this was many years back, and they showed me something that opened my eyes to this. They took those old Roman columns made out of marble that can carry all this weight, and they asked a supercomputer how to use the same material but use the least marble possible. And what the supercomputer did was designed a column that was like a web-like structure. I can't really describe it. It wasn't balanced necessarily, but it was a web-like structure. It just took out piece after piece of marble, but the rigidity and strength never went away. It got to about, I think it was 1/3 or something of the material needed to give the exact same strength. I was like, oh my gosh. In our businesses, we have this hierarchy that's a very rigid hierarchy. What if we have a web-like structure? And the solution I found is most businesses match people's talents to a title. You're my receptionist. You better be skilled at communication and data entry and so forth. But the web-like structure, the optimized structure, is not meeting talent to titles. It's meeting talent to tasks. What I mean is, if I have someone that's a good communicator, you're not my receptionist, you may be answering the phone, but you also may be my frontline salesperson because I need good communicators there. And you match up their super strengths to all the different titles or areas that need it. Now you have a web-like structure. In our business, it's basically eradicated titles. We have a few people, like we have a president just so that we have a hierarchy, but other people really don't have titles. They fill the roles that they're optimized for.
It's perfect. I've often said like a role is just a collection of tasks. We don't have titles. The same girl who does my bookkeeping also does my social media and sends my emails. Like
perfect example.
What you're talking about sounds a lot like geodesic domes, that self-supporting structure that Buckminster Fuller invented. It's like, the one at Disney World.
Yes.
I love it. This has been such a refreshing chat. I'm going to recommend Clockwork. It's an awesome book, especially your concepts, the Ds, the Queen Bee role. Your own story is inspiring. I know you've walked the talk. You've got the successes. I've enjoyed reading it. I'm looking forward to sticking a hard copy on that bookshelf when it gets built. It's coming really soon. My audience have been hearing about this forever. So where would you like people to go? What would you like them to do?
Well, yeah, invite them if you want to get the book. You can go to any bookstore and choose Clockwork, revised and expanded. It is circulating globally. And if you want to learn more about the book specifically on the web, you can go to clockwork.life. And because I believe it's a lifestyle, that's why I picked that domain. So clockwork.life.
Thank you so much, Mike Michalowicz. Awesome to chat. I hope we can chat when you have your next book or any other books you want to talk about.
Oh, you got a deal, man. That would be awesome, mate.
All right. Thank you so much. This is episode 946. It's up there at jamesschramko.com. We'll also put a PDF transcription with some of the bullet points in that. Get in touch with Mike, read the book. And also, if you happen to bump into Mike at one of his events, whatever, say hi. Tell him you heard him on the James Schramko podcast.
I'd like that.
This is James Schramko.